Hello, Henry. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. Thanks, Hayley.
Good. Excellent. Well, today we are going to be talking about hypermobility in children and what we can do for our children who are hypermobile, discussing some of the injuries that I commonly see in clinic. And then we're going to be talking about protein for children and how we can get little sneaky bits of protein into their meals in a tasty way. And that's where you're going to come in, Henry, with your top tips and your excellent knowledge of how we can just diversify maybe some of the recipes, because like me, I tend to use the same sort of recipes just because it's a trusted recipe and I know how to do it. But I would like you to kind of teach us a little bit more how we can make it more exciting and get our children involved with that too. So diving straight in, I know you've got children, Henry, and so have I. And you may or may not have come across this as a parent already, because you can have parents who send their children to lots of after school clubs or different groups and things, sports teams and things, and they can sometimes end up doing a bit too much sport or they become injured. And that's when we
Okay.
often see them in clinic. And they come in to see me
Yes.
and I take a little look at them and their parents say to me, they're very bendy. What is happening with my bendy child? And I have
And just to clarify, when you say hypermobility, is that double jointed?
yes.
Am I thinking the right thing?
You
Fine.
are.
Okay.
Yes. So hypermobility, it's termed hypermobility spectrum disorder, even though I don't
Okay.
really like the disorder term because it sounds
Mm.
negative, doesn't it? But that's what its classification is. If you look it up in research or documents and things like that. But really, yes, it just simply means that your joints are flexible. So especially if you're looking at just generalized joint hypermobility. And that could be that, they want to sit cross-legged, they overbend, they might be able to put their hands flat to the floor. They might be able to do back bends and sort of sit in funny positions at home that parents often say they sleep really strange. They sleep sort of stretched out in all kinds of positions and things like that. And then alongside that,
Like party tricks. Like,
party
oh,
tricks.
I can lick my elbow, or I
Yes.
can put my legs behind my head, or something. And it's I've witnessed that a few times.
As in you can do
Um,
that, Henry, or
I definitely can't. I can't do that. I was once described by a chiropractor as a bit like an oak tree, kind of solid and a bit.
so you-
Yeah,
you're
I
kind of the
can't.
opposite.
I'm not very bendy. I am the opposite.
Yeah, so you're the total opposite. So yeah, absolutely. So flexibility. So you might do certain party tricks, and people might
Mm.
do the splits. Girls often go into complete splits. Um, Boys might do sort of fancy tricks as well, but generally don't tend to do the splits. They tend to do more sport injuries because they might play
Mm.
football, and because of the high impact and the flexible joints, they're more prone to injuries and sometimes even dislocations. So dislocations is a common issue, especially around the kneecap. So if you dislocate your kneecap when you're young, it doesn't necessarily mean you're hypermobile, but if you add all the evidence together, sometimes you can actually say, all right, did you used to sit cross-legged? Did you used to dislocate your shoulders or your knees? And it all starts to add to a bigger picture.
Yes.
But in clinic, we look at children, and we can also look at this in adults. Most of the time, children will grow out of hypermobility, but with adults, it can carry on. It can continue into adulthood. And I still see adults who are, even crazy as it sounds, up to the age of 70, 80, and they still have some hypermobile joints. So you can discover this at any point, and it's a specialist interest area of mine where I really love to help this client base because there's so much you can do if you strengthen up the muscles in the right way.
Gotcha.
But not everyone
Gotcha.
knows what they should be doing or what they could be doing. And so children.
So it's more. It's more common in children, and then some kids kind of grow out of it. Is that just because their kind of bodies get bigger and the muscles get stronger, and
Yes.
then their tendons are a bit tougher? I don't know, and they're just not able to flex as much. Is that?
Yeah, so as we grow, as a child, we'll go through different growth spurts, and your bone length is trying to catch up with your tendon length, and your muscles are trying to catch up with your bone, and so you go through these kind of peaks and troughs of various growth spurts and growth phases. But as children, yes, generally a lot of children, it's quite common to see a little bit of hypermobility. Not every child is, but it is a bit more distinguishable. You can kind of tell. And they might have other things going on alongside their joint hypermobility. So they might be complaining of pain. They might have other traits. So they might be slightly anxious. They might also have other neurodiversity, as it's termed now, in terms of maybe some ADHD, they might have some
Yeah.
dyslexia, they might have some control issues like dyspraxia, which is where people would walk and they sort of almost look like they're a little bit clumsy with their walking and they sort of hit into door frames and that sort of thing. Um, and they
Okay.
might find there's other issues happening around it. So there's this bigger body. So you kind of zoom in and you sort of can either be just generally a little bit flexible in your joints, and then you can feed in other things that children might have. So they might have soft, velvety skin, or they might have significant scarring because it's the type of collagen basically in their connective tissue that makes them go into these sort of unusual scar types. And that's what we look at in clinics. We say, show us your scars, and they look slightly different to normal scars. And so there's lots of
Oh
things that you can
wow.
look at, and it's really interesting.
So what in how they heal, you can tell
Yeah.
from like a cut on their body.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, that's exactly it. So you they normally look a little bit more sort of clear. Sometimes the scars can either look very white or very clear, and they look sort of shriveled up, a bit like even like stretch marks. So kids can even have stretch
Huh.
marks as they grow, and you can see them sort of across the back or through the bottom. And even adults, you can sometimes see that, and they say, "What are these lines on me?" And it's just because their skin is quite stretchy, and it's just the way that the body is made up. It's it's connective tissue. But if you think about where hypermobility is happening, so this is in our joints and our ligaments. So our ligaments attach bone to bone. And if our ligaments are quite stretchy, the bones become quite mobile because I sort of see ligaments as sellotape, like sticking the bones
Yeah.
together. And
Okay.
then
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then the muscles like kind of go around that to protect the joint. And that's why we want to maximize our muscle strength as best we can for children, because that can stop this excessive shift or lots of movement, because somebody might have lots of movement through a particular range. So they might want to sit with their legs open and sort of into that split position. But we say,
Yeah.
no, 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 you can't do your party tricks and you can't sit like that, because if you do and you do it repetitively, it can cause problems. And in adults, I say,
Okay.
don't cross your legs is a classic one of, oh, I always sit with my legs crossed, or I tuck my feet back under my chair, or I sit on the sofa and I have my legs to the side and I sit all curled up. And I'm like, and I'm just in clinic going, no, you can't do those, can't do that. Because if you can really turn around, if someone is in pain because they've been doing this all their life, and it might be a child that's doing it or an adult, you say, okay, let's break these habits. And after breaking those habits, even within 1 or 2 weeks, they can significantly be better and their pain will go
Wow.
down. So just making little changes to that.
So people with hypermobility, is it common? Is it kind of uh is there kind of a percentage of people who have it, or like are there like stats around it or something?
Yeah, so depending on what you read, when you look at the statistics, it can be quite variable. You might read something from 15% to 50% of the generalized population
Okay.
will be hypermobile. Depending on who you are. So obviously I would see it a lot in clinic. I think it's something that's becoming a little bit more common, or something that's more recognizable. And for a long time, hypermobility was generally considered to be, you're a little bit mobile, but not recognized as this bigger sort of spectrum basically of everything else that goes on with it. And you have to pass a certain criteria. So we call it a Baton scale. And it's a nine
Okay.
point scale. And it basically looks at how flexible are you in your little finger. So can you bend your little finger back to 90 degrees? So as you can see, I'm a little bit hypermobile. So I'm 90-degree position. So I don't know how far you can
Mm,
bend your finger back, Henry, but oh yeah, there's the oak
don't know.
tree.
Is that bendy? No.
Too bendy. So you can see if you
Okay.
hold up your hand though, you're the comparison. So I'm very flexible because I can basically get
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
90 degrees. And you can
Yeah.
even see
Yeah.
it
That's rubbish.
in this joint. I'm even
Yeah. Yeah.
flexible there.
I can't touch my toes. I'm just below the knees as if I'm standing up straight and bending over. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely.
bend
I need
things
to do
down.
more stretches.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so that's 1 point. So you get 1 point for that. The other one is, can you get your thumb to your forearm? So you kind of see if you can reach your tip.
No. No way. Like, depending on the angle I hold it, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
not a chance.
it's multiple inches,
Yeah.
not a
So
chance. Yeah.
yeah, even if you try and force it. So you can see I'm not far off. When I was younger, I could
Mm,
touch onto my forearm. As you get older, you tend to grow out of it a little bit through your hands, and obviously, physio hands. I've probably got a little bit of degeneration in my
yeah.
thumbs, but
Yeah.
so yeah, so I can't quite get all the way over. Then you would look at things like your knees. Can you lock out your knees? So that would be another point. And these hand points are one per side, so it would be finger
Okay.
1, 2, 4. And then you look at your
Yeah.
knees, which would be, can you push back with your knees? The other one is elbows. Can you hyperextend through your elbows? So how straight is your elbow through here? So mine you
Mm,
can see is quite straight, and I can even, you
yeah.
might
Yeah.
not pick this up on the camera, but if I angle it with the bottom of my picture, you can see I've gone
Mm,
lower than the angle
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
my elbow.
Yeah. I can just go.
Yeah.
I just go
Whereas
flat.
you might just be, most people are like that. So they've got a little bit of a bend.
Yes.
So we look at elbows.
Yeah.
So that's another 2 points. And then you look at hands flat on the floor. So you score that up and it comes out as how many out of 9. So you would score 0 out of 9, Henry,
Zero.
probably.
Yeah. 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 So not
Not
hypermobile.
hypermobile. And you have to score, for children, you have to score a good 6 out of 9. And for
Okay.
adults, you would score 5. It used to be 4 to 5, but I think it's
Okay.
generally 5 out of 9.
Okay.
And that would say that you're generally generalized joint hypermobility. And then obviously you then need to think about, are there other things going on? So for children, do you have issues with nausea, emptying your bowels when you've just eaten your dinner? Like, you'll get some children who'll eat
Okay.
their tea and they'll rush off to the toilet. And that's due to the motility through the gut, absorption and how it travels through the
Huh.
gastrointestinal tract. So it's very interesting how the kids can have loose stools, constipation. They can be one end or the other. They might have bowel obstruction, the motility through the gut and through the bowel, and then they might have issues with that too. Or they might just feel a bit sick or a bit nauseous with certain foods. They might have reactions. They might have allergies. So there's so much to it because it's due to
Yeah.
the
Crazy.
kind of histamine reaction that our body goes through. And some people can be severely, then they really, you dive into these questions. Um,
Yeah.
and children and parents will say, gosh, yeah, they do that. They have that. They have this, they have that. And you kind of put that together.
And earlier on, you mentioned about like kind of ADHD or neurodiverse symptoms. How are they connected?
Yeah. So it seems to be a little bit of a kind of like a framework as it's put together. And there's different components. So if you think of like the joint mobility is like the musculoskeletal section, the neurodiversity with the word neuro tends to kind of cover kind of neurological type aspects,
Mm,
which we obviously know could be linked with gut brain axis as well, and how you can have kind of even like OCD, anxiety, depression, all those kind of issues that children can have and that we tend to hear more about at the moment. And then you can have
yes.
those skin eye irritation issues as well. So adults particularly get dry eye because it's the connective tissue and the eyelid, and that can sometimes lead to dry eye, and they can get blockages in the inner eyelids, and it's all to do with
Crazy.
sort of certain protein buildups and things like that. And you're supposed to blink harder because although you're flexible, you don't always do a hard blink. So I think we've talked before,
Yes.
haven't we, about working from home? And I think I mentioned on that about how we should look away with our vision
Yes.
and how we give our eyes a rest, but we should also like blink really hard um,
Okay.
so that we kind of get the tear, otherwise breaks up across the
G-
eye quite quickly. And if
Gotcha.
we can close our eyes hard, it kind of just keeps the eye a little bit more lubricated, and you're trying to keep that up so that you disperse
So with
evenly.
s- so just going back to the neurodiverse things, because obviously, kids in primary school, I think since kind of post COVID, it seems to be talked about a lot more. Like the teachers are writing about it, they're talking about it, like,
Uh-huh.
and maybe there's just more awareness, or or there was, kind of that period of being away from kind of school and friends and whatnot was, it had impacts on certain kids. Is there also like if people are picking up that kids have got like ADHD or these neurodiverse problems? Is there also a higher chance that they'll also be hypermobile, or is it, or like, is that kind of a direct correlation?
Absolutely. So I haven't looked at the exact research as to how many people with, say, autism are then hypermobile, but I know
Okay.
for sure that when I see them for hypermobility first in clinic, patients or the parents will say they also have, autism, or we're waiting for this, or we're waiting for
Crazy.
EHCP
That's so
to go
interesting.
through, or there's elements of it. And obviously, a bit like
Mm.
hypermobility, you could be a little bit hypermobile and you can be very hypermobile. And
Yeah,
with all
of
these,
course, of course.
that's kind of why they call them spectrums, really. But
Yes.
it's just to kind of say that you can fit anywhere along that spectrum, and it's just basically just a little bit of a checklist of like, okay, how many of these things do we have, and what can we do about them? And talking about the
Mm.
hypermobility with the autism, that's some of the reason why some children, bless them, they struggle to sit still. So they can't sit still.
Mm.
They fidget in class. They might be wriggling. They might, I've heard some parents say that their children have to go out of the classroom, have movement. So they go out, have a little move around, and then they come back in. And that's great because it's their body sometimes from a hypermobility perspective. I'm now talking because
Yeah.
I'm not a ADHD or an autism expert.
No.
But from a hypermobility perspective and thinking about what's happening with the body, hypermobile children would fatigue quite quickly. So if we don't have
Yeah.
adequate muscle strength, we're going to tire with how we sit.
Gotcha.
And then, sitting there for a long time in a classroom is going to take its toll on your body, and you just want to move around. And in a way, it's your
Yes.
body kind of saying, will you please move me? Because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a
Well,
body.
listen to your body.
Yeah, listen to your body. Your body's telling you, can you move now? You've sat too long.
Unless the teacher says still.
Sit still, and you're saying obviously sit still, and that's, and it might just happen quicker for those hypermobile patients. So somebody else might be able to sit for, I don't know, 45 minutes, but somebody with hypermobility and then with other maybe neurodiversity issues will sit for maybe only half that time because they're getting distractible, because maybe they're suffering with symptoms as well.
So if you have a child that is hypermobile, is it obviously you mentioned at the beginning about like maybe doing too much sport and that's kind of stressing on the body, but is there also the kind of the reverse of not doing enough movement that you're then not kind of building up the muscles? So then I guess I can imagine like if I was really hypermobile that, that feeling kind of like steady, like whether you were kind of walking across uneven ground or like I guess like at the playground or something, and you're kind of climbing over those rubber tires and stuff. If you've got really kind of wibbly wobbly joints that then aren't kind of like got the strong muscle around, that you're maybe more likely to injure yourself or kind of overextend and then kind of kind of
Yeah,
cause some harm.
you're
So is it a kind of a mixture of not doing too much but not making sure you're doing nothing?
Yes, you're absolutely right with that. So if you're like climbing over the tires, as you explained, if you're very mobile in your joints, you might sprain your ankle. You might go over on it. So you might do like an inversion injury on your ankle, or you might sort of hurt your knee. You might sort of overextend through your knee, and then people say, "Oh, my knees hurt at the front," and that sort of thing. They might be jumping and landing, and they sort of land all funny. They don't land straight and solid. They
Yes.
might land slightly offset, and that's obviously repetitively doing that is going to cause repetitive issues for the knees, the ankles, or even the hips sometimes. And then choosing the type of sport. So some people, if they do football, they might say, "Do you know, I'm keep getting injured. I get injured every term." But so contact sports can leave you a little bit more high risk for injuries occurring, because if someone knocks
Yeah.
into you from the side and you're already flexible, you're going to kind of go with that. But if you can strengthen up, and that's where the strengthening based program is really good. So sort of strengthening up from your ankles, your knees, your hips, your core muscles. And that's where you definitely do want to be doing lots of exercise to strengthen and not avoiding it, because there's not sort of a reason why you couldn't then play some of those sports, especially if you really love it. You get a child who that's all they want to do. You don't want to be the person saying, no, you shouldn't really do that, because, they might absolutely love it. But you talk about the risk of what they could do if they do play it a lot, and how you can try and reduce the chances of injury. And there's certain sports. So, with girls, for instance, you've got somebody doing gymnastics and dance can actually help strengthen up their joints. You just have to
Yes.
be a bit careful from the flexibility point of view. Again, are they doing
Yes.
repetitive moves? Are they using their flexibility, or are they engaging muscles correctly? And that's what we tend to look at in clinic. Can we strengthen them up? And something as simple as I remember with my sort of hypermobile children, I like to get them doing like the wheelbarrow walks with their upper limb. So I'll get them
Okay.
use their hands and I'll
You hold their
yeah,
legs.
you hold
Yeah,
their
yeah,
legs
yeah.
like the wheelbarrow, and that's your very good scapular setting and strength loading, but in a gentle way because they're just sort of doing one at a time.
Yes.
So things like that
Yes.
can really help to build them up.
So if you've got a child that is hypermobile and they are saving, like you say, dance classes or playing football, whatever, is it something that if you know about it and you're kind of aware of it as a parent, that you should highlight it to your kind of the coaches or the teacher, so they're aware, that not to go too far, but also kind of that they've got to do something. I don't know. Is that
Yeah, yeah. So some sports teams, it's about all varying sports teams. You get the ones that are set up by parents to the ones that are professionally led. So the amount of support that whether they've got a physio in their team or they don't have a physio in their team, and how aware the team captains can be sometimes as well, and they're like sort of picking out that so and so gets injured a lot, and they speak to the
mm,
parents. And also whether the parents are truly kind of aware of how their children are
mm,
feeling, because often I'll get kids in clinic and I'll say to them like, do you have back pain or does it hurt your knees? And they go, yeah. And the parents go, I didn't know that. Why don't you tell
yeah,
me?
yeah,
Because they don't. So it's just sometimes checking in with your children, just looking out, especially for the ages of around 11 to 14 is the sweet spot for where kids can pick up injuries in playing sport if they are
okay.
hypermobile.
So a little bit later.
Little bit later, unless you've had reasons to consider flexibility issues before that.
Mm,
So, that might be under, certain things with the doctor or something's happened and you think, oh, they've dislocated, they've done something. And they might say, actually, this child may be hypermobile, but we'll watch,
yes.
wait and see if they grow out of it. A lot of children will grow out of it. Some will stay with it. And, it can sometimes run in families as well. So, if your mum or your dad or your grandparents are hypermobile, it's likely that you could be as well, because it does seem to follow that trend. Coming back to the schools, you can sometimes also have issues with handwriting and things like holding your pen.
Mm,
So kids will often, say, "Oh, my handwriting's not very neat," and you'll get the teacher saying, "Oh, they're not joining up very well. They can't hold their pen properly." And there's things again. It's just the strength. It's the what we call the opposition of holding a pencil or a pen. And
yes.
I know you can get these really cool things that you can put on your pencils and pens, like those little rubber
Little rubbers.
holders.
Yeah, yeah.
And that can help because that can just give a little bit more width to the actual equipment, and then you can actually hold that a little bit better, and children can find that
Mm,
that works quite nicely. But doing
yeah, yeah.
exercises that cross your midline, so if you can say for example kids do like a little bit of boxing exercises, that's going across your midline, so across your body with weights, and that has been shown in research to really help handwriting. So there's some really cool little things that you can go, "Oh, I know how to get you better."
Not with the boxing gloves on though.
No, yeah, with the boxing gloves or not the boxing gloves, but just getting them strong, and doing some resistance work, because most of the time I'd probably say that children might focus on aerobic exercise. So they might run around, they might do like little running clubs or things like that, but they might not always be doing core exercises. Upper body strength is one of
Yeah, yeah,
them,
yeah.
but they may focus on lower limb strength. But yeah, is it
Okay.
encompassing, you know, balance, coordination, plyometrics, so things like jumping, landing, up and down boxes, that sort of stuff. And you can do all that kind of training to help children really fight off the risk of injury. And then obviously building the muscle up as best you can.
Yes.
And that's not just through exercise, but what we also put in our mouth. And that's where
Yeah, yeah.
protein
Totally.
comes in as well. So
Yeah.
yeah. So protein.
Well, that's super interesting. My daughter actually is hypermobile, so and we kind of were aware of it fairly on, and so we've kind of, I guess, we're kind of living that kind of, that she's not actually a particularly sporty person, but she can put her legs behind her head and do all sorts of party tricks, and it's kind of funny,
Mhm.
and she likes doing it. But then actually, when we've spoken to professional help, there was just like, no, no, please don't encourage that.
No.
That's not a good thing to do. And because of that kind of overextending and then causing issues. I think the thing for me, when I first noticed it, was when we were rock pooling. And you're kind of on a rock pool, it's a little bit seaweedy and it's all kind of bumpy, and you're kind of stepping around, and it's kind of like, it's like walking, in a kind of an alien landscape. And she was really kind of uh, wobbly on her feet, and her cousins, who were kind of similar age, were just like skipping and jumping all over the place. And it was that kind of noticing of like, oh, she's like struggling on this kind of uneven terrain, and going kind of quite cautiously and carefully. So kind of working with a physio, we did. What do they suggest? They were talking about when we walk upstairs that she always used to do like lead with the dominant foot, and
Yes.
they were like, oh, you need to try and like alternate, because you're gonna start building up that strength. And so we kind of did that for a few years, and actually, and obviously as she's got older, like my kind of barometer test now is if we ever go to the beach and then kind of see her running around on the rock pools, and those still probably not as as fast as her cousins. She's definitely better, and I think just being a bit kind of aware of it and conscious. But
Yeah.
and then that thing with the pen grip you were talking about, she holds her pen with her index finger. No, her middle finger. So it's kind of no, sorry, with her ring finger. So she's got like three fingers on it. And it looks really kind of odd. The pen's sticking out the wrong place. And we've tried to kind of, we've got all of those like jelly things and,
Yeah.
easy grips and stuff. And actually, because of her hypermobility in her fingers, she just doesn't have the strength to feel comfortable on the pen. So she kind of defaults to this kind of like three fingers on it rather than two. And anyway, she seems to have got used to it now. So
Yeah.
I think we're too late in the game to change it. So
Oh,
but yeah, but it's kind of, yeah, it's interesting. But I didn't know about that link between hypermobility and then kind of neurodiverse symptoms. So I think that, yeah, I
yeah.
guess
It's really
something to be aware of.
really
Well,
interesting.
yeah.
And like you said, with the not every child gets on with the little easy grips, by the way, with the pencil. And
Mm,
what I do in that situation is you can do like opposition exercises. So you press your finger against your thumb and you just push, as you can see on the screen probably. You push
yeah.
quite hard. And you can strengthen up your fingers, even like pushing your fingers just onto the desk, just to try and strengthen them
Okay.
up, and your thumbs. That can also really help, because yeah, sometimes they don't like the feel, it maybe even sometimes the texture of them, and it feels a bit awkward for them sometimes. So
Mm,
some people, you either kind of love them or don't get on with them.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, totally.
that's one way
See,
of doing it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we talk about building muscle, and so I was kind of, when you kind of suggested the topic, I was thinking about, well, what kind of meals do we like eating as a family that I know the kids like and they get involved with, that have kind of protein in,
Yes.
and some of it kind of obvious protein, and then other ones kind of how can we kind of subtly sneak some
Yeah.
protein in,
Yes. Yeah. Should we
that
start
that
with
kind of
the
stealth cooking.
should we start with the obvious forms of protein, Henry, and
Yeah.
then we'll work down to the
Well,
sneaking it in, because I like that. That's always good.
yeah, yeah, totally. Well, I was thinking about kind of, it's midweek. I mean, and what do the kids want to eat, and then how can we make it ourselves? And so I guess like, whether it's like fish fingers are a kind of, probably a staple in lots of people's houses, where they get that packet and it's a box and they just shake them onto the tray and they pop them into the oven and they don't think anything of it. And actually, fish is a great source of protein, and good for your brain
Yeah.
and stuff.
Omega
Particularly,
3.
good quality, yeah, omega 3, exactly. And actually, they're super easy to make your own fish fingers, and also you not only can you get better quality fish, but you can. I mean, they're a little bit more effort, and they're probably not going to be quite as square and orange. But I think that's a good thing personally.
So how
But also,
would you make your own fish fingers? Would you? Because in my head, I would cut the fish, wrap it in maybe, I know, egg, and then breadcrumb.
yeah, so we're going to do something called paneing, and there's a bit. So if you're making fish fingers, you want to make like a decent batch, and then you can freeze some, because you're going to have to like get your prep out. So I would always we just buy whatever fish you want, but like a kind of a good white fish. I mean, obviously cod, haddock, but there's often in the supermarket they quite often have it discounted fish. So like just as long as it's in date and it looks fresh, it's going to be fine.
Good to go.
So you want to then chop it into your and buy enough that you can do like enough that you can have for dinner, and then a few more meals that you can stick in the freezer, because then it's, once you've made them, they're as quick as fish fingers from the packet. Once you've actually done the prep, and the prep is super easy. You you cut your fish up, and a little bit of salt, and then you just want to toss them in some flour. So just plain flour, and then put that to one side. Now, this is the bit that most people get wrong, is that we're going to go flour and then like an egg mixture with a little bit of milk in it, and that's almost like your kind of like your wallpaper paste.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
then
say
you
this
want
is
some kind
messy.
of coating. Now that could just be breadcrumbs. Now you can buy breadcrumbs, or if you've got a loaf, you could just either chop them up in the Magimix or in your little, blender, and so you can make fresh breadcrumbs quite quickly. Or you can use, you can add some oats in there if you want a bit more texture, a bit more flavor. So you can do different stuff, but just regular breadcrumbs. And quite often I use like a wholemeal sourdough or something,
Yeah,
with a
nice.
bit more flavor to
Fiber.
it. But I probably wouldn't do like a seeded loaf or something, kind of just keep it kind of brown or white. So you dust them in the flour, and then you wash your hands, because what you don't want is you don't want floury fingers now. And then we operate the principle of wet hand, dry hand.
Okay.
So say you've got 20 pieces of fish that you're going to be breadcrumbing. The amateur thing to do is you get a piece of fish and you dip it into the egg, and then you lift it out, and then you dip it into the breadcrumbs and you shake it around. But what you also do is you very quickly start breadcrumbing your fingers. And so by the time you've done like 4 or 5, you're now in a right old pickle, because you've got breadcrumbs glued to your fingers, and they're getting thicker and thicker, and there's less and less breadcrumbs on the fish.
And it's
Anyway,
all on the
so
page
you have a
now.
wet hand and a dry hand. So you do the wet is always with the wet hand, and then you drop that into the breadcrumbs, little shake off, but you don't put that wet hand into the breadcrumbs. You now use your dry hand to toss and then put them onto a tray. And you can go for hours. Honestly, I mean, I've panade, let's say 500 Scotch eggs when I used to run the butchery, and I, never ended up with panade fingers, because
Wow.
you just a wet hand and a dry hand.
So you don't
It's a bit like, is it the
know.
Karate Kid when he's like kind of wipe on, wipe off? Yeah. You just got to remember that. Anyway, now obviously in your flour or the breadcrumbs, you could add some seasonings. You could you could put spices there or whatever, or just keep it plain. Like personally, I just keep it simple, because I don't want to kind of weird the kids out, be like, oh, they don't taste as they should do. And then when they're done, you can then just pop them in the fridge, or you can cook them straight away. They take maybe 20 minutes for like the breadcrumbs to kind of glue themselves on. They kind of need to like settle a little bit. And also you can freeze them. So like I would just, if you freeze them, just make sure you freeze them separately. And then once they're frozen, you can then just put them into a bag, because then they won't glue themselves together. And then you can just pick them out as you go. And from a kind of cooking point of view, either just some oil and then into a hot oven, and that'd be fine. You can fry them if you want. If you've got an air fryer or a deep fat fryer, you could fry them in that, and that'd be great. And you're going to have delicious, fresh fish, nice breadcrumbs. It's going to be very tasty. So they're like a firm favorite. But also my kids, they're at that stage where they like chicken nuggets now. Obviously, I
Yes.
can't buy I can't buy chicken nuggets, so we have to make them ourselves. And just exactly the same principles. Going down the kind of breadcrumb route works totally fine. And again, but you might want to put some, you could put some smoked paprika in there, or a few spices and stuff, just to kind of elevate it if you're, trying to make it a little bit more kind of like that kind of Cajun-y flavor, or
Yeah.
whatever that is on the kind of magic stuff that they put in
It's a
pre-made
nugget.
ones. But a family recipe that we love is kind of like breaded chicken. We then roast off and get nice and crispy, but with like a katsu curry sauce. So I think the kids had it at Wagamama
Oh
a
yeah.
few years ago. And actually, it's a really good one, because it's like it's good quality rice, nice bit of chicken that you've made yourself, and then the katsu curry sauce, which essentially is just like a kind of curry sauce. But if you make it from scratch, one of the things you can do is you can add some lentils. So red lentils added to the base can they kind of cook down, and lentils are another good source
Yeah.
of protein. But if you don't do too many, they just add like a nice kind of creaminess to them, because they kind of blend down. And actually, you can even blend it afterwards. And so you've got all your kind of like your onions and your garlic and your curry powder, etc. But then add some red lentils to the mix. It's going to help thicken it and just give it that nice kind of bit of creaminess. And then in with some stock. I mean, if you're doing chicken katsu curry, you could just use some chicken stock. Bring it all to the boil, and then blitz it. And you want it to be kind of fairly thick, and but not too thick. And then just to lighten it, you could just add a dollop of a Greek yogurt, and obviously Greek yogurt is another good source of protein. So now you've got delicious homemade crispy chicken, great protein, and then a nice curry sauce, and with two types of protein in it as well. And
Delicious.
yeah, and then delicious,
That sounds brilliant.
And again, you could bulk make that. That's a
Yeah.
and then I like mine spicy, so I just add some additional chilies or chili sauce afterwards, but then the kids don't have to have it so spicy.
And you didn't pre-cook the chicken or the fish before, did you? This is completely from
Yeah,
raw.
just from yeah, I like you don't need to pre-cook it. I mean, I guess yeah, there's not really, particularly if your bits of chicken or your bits of fish are fairly thin, like it's going to take, let's say, 20 minutes in a oven at kind of 180, 200 degrees, to kind of crisp up. In that time, the chicken's going to cook fully through. So,
Yeah.
and or if you do it in an air fryer, you're going to get super crispy on the outside. And like when you make them, I mean, probably the first time, if your kids are used to eating like bird's eye fish fingers and or kind of chicken nuggets from McDonald's, like they are going to taste a little bit different, but actually maybe the first time they might tell you that they're not as good as McDonald's, and you just have to your pride is knocked, but it's fine, you can get up from this.
I just
And
keep
but by the third and
going.
second time they'll be or second and third time
Yeah.
they're totally delicious, particularly if you've got good quality ingredients going in,
Yeah.
and actually pretty easy to make. And then you just keep them in the freezer, and you've got a kind of a quick meal for when you've got to feed the kids, after they've just come back from football club or dance club or whatever it is, and you need something delicious in a hurry.
Yeah, and it's good also after you have done your exercise to fuel with the protein as well. So
Gotcha.
that's even better. So like that's they've gone and done their exercise, and then you come home and you top up your protein. So that's super. And I love how you
Definitely.
sort of just snuck in the red lentils, because I tend, I
Yeah, yeah.
tend to just put the red lentils. I soak them first. Is there a benefit of doing that, Henry?
Yeah, not really. No, like red lentils cook down within kind of 20 minutes. They've completely kind of mushed up. I think ones that would be the soaked ones, you get these like the black dal ones, and they take, I think, about 6 hours to cook. Now they are worth soaking, just because then they take like 2 hours to cook, and you just soak them overnight. But that's I'm trying to think what the name of them are, but they're quite, you wouldn't find them in the supermarket. You'd need to go to like a specialist Indian shop. I mean, the other ones, if you're trying to get lentils and stuff, I always put them in a curry. So if ever I'm making, like, even if it's a chicken curry or lamb curry or a veg curry, I'd always stick some red lentils in, just because it's kind of easy filler,
Yeah.
and because it kind of breaks down, it gives that nice bit of thickness, and also it's a bit of added protein in, and another veg to get in there.
Yeah.
But then like the puy lentils, which are the more kind of like the kind of French style ones, they again don't need soaking, but they kind of retain their texture more, so they're like little pearls. So the kids would probably notice them more if you were sneaking them in. But they're they're a great one to add to like a chili or a bolognese, or any kind of like meaty sauce, because they kind of the lentils have got that kind of slightly kind of meatiness anyway,
Yeah.
and then they absorb all of the lovely, if you're making a bolognese, you're going to have lots of nice kind of beefy tomatoey sauces, there, and then the lentil will soak it up. And actually, to be honest, it's cheaper than beef. Like, if you're feeding a crowd and you're like, oh god, like, I've got to buy quite a lot of beef. Actually, you can bulk it out with lentils,
Yeah.
and mostly people will be like, oh, this is delicious, and you've saved yourself a few pennies. So
Yeah.
like,
That's exactly.
like if my wife's like, oh, can you cook for the book club or school PTA or something, and there's 15 people, and she's like, oh, just like a chili or something, I'll always cut it with some lentils, because it makes it stretch a bit further,
It does, and I do.
and tell them it's good for them.
Yeah, I do exactly that. I sneak in the red lentils when I make a lasagna for my daughter. So
Yeah,
I'll make it,
great.
instead of using like the beef mince, I'll try and choose like turkey mince or chicken mince.
Yeah,
And then I'll add the lentils to that and hide it with loads of like homemade tomato sauce. And then with enough of the
yeah.
homemade cheese sauce, then actually she has no idea it's in there. It's
No
great.
idea. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then
And
I
it's
feel,
good. And it's good to get them used to like different textures and
yeah,
different flavors.
yeah, absolutely. So have you got any other excellent recipes and ways to sneak in some more protein, Henry?
Well, I think my kids are a big fan of smoothies. We've got one of these like NutriBullet things, and we've had it for years. Like, I mean, I'm surprised it's still going, because it gets used pretty regularly. And actually, if ever the kids are like, oh, I'm hungry and I want like a snack, or like maybe they've just had dinner and they didn't eat all of it, and it's kind of, and they're still a bit peckish. I think a smoothie is quite a good thing, because not only can they make it, but it's fairly kind of quick. So what we tend to do is like a really nice one we had the other day was like a mango style lassi. So we did Greek yogurt, frozen mango from the freezer, so you could just buy from the supermarket, kind of pre-chopped up. If ever we have bananas that are going over, we always just chop them up and chuck them in the freezer. They kind of add as like a kind of bit of sweetness and a bit of because they're frozen, they add a bit of like kind of thickness, a bit like if you were adding ice cream to a smoothie, but not. It's it's frozen fruit and ice cream, and then just some milk and and then just blend it up. Sometimes you could add a bit of, if you wanted extra sweet, you could add some maple or something. But to be honest, the mango and the banana is totally good enough. And yeah, just blitz it up until it's the kind of right kind of consistency, and then just drink it. And so you've got the good dose of Greek yogurt, which obviously, like I would love. I am happy to eat just Greek yogurt plain, but the kids kind of don't necessarily love that. So then they would be adding like other stuff to it, whether that's kind of like honey or something, or something sweet, where it's actually, once you blend it together with the banana, it does get pretty sweet. And yeah, and you could, and that's just like one thing, but you can do anything. Like quite often we'll put like peanut butter is quite a good one to kind of add a little bit of kind of nuttiness. My son likes that, my daughter doesn't, so quite often they make one together, and then she has hers, and then he puts it back on with a dollop of peanut butter, because he quite likes the flavor. And actually it's kind of quite easy and quite fun. I mean, they always make a load of mess and never put the stuff back in the freezer, but that's fine. And I kind of think like, well, actually, they're getting something that's
It's good for them.
fairly good for them, and it's got some protein, and
Absolutely.
better than I don't know, a Kit Kat or something. I don't know.
And we go through a lot of Greek yogurt as well. I'm glad you said that.
Okay.
And so many recipes, you can really sneak in the Greek yogurt, can't you, into lots of
Mm.
things, pancakes, all sorts. And I make those scones with them and things. So you can really, and then you end up going, and the pizza bases, anything like that, I make with Greek yogurt just to get that extra protein. And half the time I'm like, I'll run out of Greek yogurt. Start with like 5.
Need to get some more. Yeah. And it's Greek because obviously Greek yogurt's just made. It's just cultured milk, and then they strain it to kind of remove more of the kind of water. So, and does that just kind of just concentrate the proteins more? So you're just getting more bang for every spoon.
Yeah, it's high. It's a good source of high protein, and it's an easy thing that you can actually. It's like one of the healthiest things you can actually buy from a supermarket, which is
Yeah.
even better. So you
Yeah.
go, I'm hungry, what can
Yeah.
I eat? And especially if you mix that, obviously if you're child or adult, and depending if you can have seeds or nuts and things, but you can even add that to it, and that adds your protein. You just constantly top up your protein all the time, don't you? And you can mix
Yeah.
it together with
Totally.
different types of nuts, or you can add in some extra seeds and like anything just to bulk it up and make it a bit more interesting. And if kids are picking them out,
Yeah.
like, a bit like pick a mix, I tend to put them out, and then Jazz will kind of put them on her cereal or wherever, or her porridge oats. Actually, she's not allowed cereal. I don't let her have cereal. But if she's adding them
Quite
onto
right.
onto her breakfast, she then feels like she's in control a bit more, and making those choices,
Yes.
and that's also
Yes.
nice too, isn't it? Yeah.
Definitely. And then just on obviously eggs are like another really easy protein. But so the challenge I have, my son loves eggs. He'll eat them fried, poached, boiled, however they come. My daughter doesn't like eggs, but she doesn't mind eggs in things. So the way we've got around this is particularly on the weekend when we've got a bit more time, kind of big, fluffy American style pancakes. And again, start with, separating the eggs, so we can use both, but you whisk up the egg whites so they're nice and fluffy, and then it gets folded in later. But then into the egg yolks you can add milk, but then also quite a lot of Greek yogurt again. Now, quite often the recipes ask for like buttermilk. I think it's kind of like the kind of classic American one, but actually we don't have buttermilk in the fridge. We've got Greek yogurt, and so you're getting that protein, but also that kind of thickness just makes them a bit richer. And then you add some flour and a bit of baking powder, and then you fold back in the egg whites, and it just makes them kind of like light and fluffy. And then when you're cooking them on your griddle pan, and then they can top them with, whether it's bacon or more
It's a bit more savoury.
like frozen fruit, or sometimes they have them savory. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, they probably put a bit too much maple syrup on. But again, it's that thing of like, because my daughter doesn't like eggs, but actually, well, they're plenty of egg in, and also the Greek yogurt. So you kind of know you're getting, and then also so much better than pre-made ones that you can buy
Yeah.
from the supermarket, which will be full of all sorts of ingredients you won't even know how to pronounce.
Yeah, exactly. And I've done that before, and I've run out of Greek yogurt, and I've thrown in like cottage cheese, because that's also high
Yeah.
in protein, and then that works just as well, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
it's like a
Perfect.
new revelation. I mean, I'm like, wow, that worked
Yeah.
really nicely. So yeah, that's another great source as well. And all that's going to just help repair and build muscle. And that's going to be really crucial, especially if kids are doing lots of exercise, and they'll sleep better, everything. And kids do need quite a lot of protein. So
Yes.
various things you can easily look it up online, but there'll be different age ranges of how much protein you should have. Sort of broken down into sort of every 3 years, roughly what you need to have. But and that can be anything from about 14 grams right up to about 28 grams as you go from about age 2 to 3 right up to about 18 years old. And as you get a little bit older, kids as they get older, they obviously boys need slightly more than girls.
Yes.
So that's important to remember. But and like you say, that's great ways of sneaking in fantastic protein in a delicious way where they feel like they're almost having a takeaway, don't they?
Yes. Yes.
You can do some really exciting things. I know my daughter likes chicken drumsticks, and I'll make up a little bit of a sauce. Now I'm no chef, Henry, but I tend to do it with like the best ketchup I can find, so like the Stokes one or something like that. With
Yeah.
just adding little bits, like you say, a little bit of like the best honey I can find, so it's just a little
Yeah.
sweeter, and mixing it up with a bit of mustard powder, and it comes out a bit barbecuey. It's quite nice.
Yeah. Delicious. Yeah. Great.
She'll eat that. And I'm like, well, that's better than, like you say, buying chicken nuggets or something like that. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah, we need to try and stay clear of those things because they're just full of other. If you look at the back,
Totally.
it's quite scary what food's being added to these
Totally.
products.
Totally. But then also they, from a kid's point of view, because quite often, I mean, I don't know whether kids discuss what they have for dinner with their friends, but, particularly they go over to their friend's house and they might have, chicken nuggets from a packet and be like, well, Jimmy down the road eats chicken nuggets. Why can't we have them? It's like, well, you can,
Yeah.
and then, they're kind of feeling like they're kind of, they're not being ostracized or not, having access to those foods, but actually, as a parent, that they're, it's made with, uh, not only high quality ingredients, but also hasn't got all of the other guff in that it's just not needed and doesn't
Made with
help.
love. It's made with love. And
Yeah, yeah,
with
exactly,
the best
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
intentions,
exactly.
isn't it, as well?
You'll thank us when you're older,
Exactly, exactly.
hopefully.
Yeah, and like you say, I don't know about you, but I know you love cooking, Henry, anyway, because it's your job. But I really enjoy being in the kitchen with my daughter, and she does love it. I think it's a really good tactile thing for kids to get involved in, and they're
Mm,
more likely, I think we've mentioned this before, that they will eat it more if they make it. And you can
yeah.
get them to see that that's how food is made as well, which is
Mm,
excellent education. It helps them weigh out. I kind of get my daughter doing a little bit of maths as she does it. I'm like, what does that add up to? Um, so you're trying to do as much as you can. I know everyone's busy and you don't always get time to do that, but that's where the bulk preparation is really handy, isn't it? So like you say, you could
yes.
make
Yeah, yeah.
a load of fish fingers homemade in advance. Yeah, and you can sometimes even pick up the fish a bit cheaper, can't you? Especially like certain supermarkets will discount things at certain times of the day, and you might pick up double the
Totally.
amount. And you said you just use any type of fish, didn't you? Any kind of white.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, if you use, kind of smoked mackerel or smoked haddock, the kids might not
An acquired
be so
taste.
keen. But yeah, but any kind of like, I mean, there's obviously, the ocean is full of thousands of different types of fish, and I mean, we've got a Morrison's near us, and occasionally I go in, and they quite often have like a different fish, so they'll have all the kind of regular ones, but they obviously. I guess if they've got them cheap or whatever, like, they've got a special deal and then they just flog them out there. And what did we picked up some, it was like witch sole, and it was basically like, it's like a flatfish. And I remember when I was running a restaurant that it was always like it was on the shopping list from the fish supplier, and but it was kind of, you had like Dover sole was like the really expensive one, and you had like kind of lemon sole or place whatever, and then witch sole was like right down the bottom. It was like super cheap. The texture is not very premium. Like if you're serving it at a restaurant, it's like it's a bit of an average fish. But for fish fingers, it's like it's totally fine. Like your kids aren't going to be moaning that the fine texture of the Dover sole isn't quite right. It's like actually once it's covered in breadcrumbs and it's crispy and they've like put loads of ketchup on it, and like they're never going to notice. So actually, yeah, it doesn't have to be prime cod fillet
Yeah.
or etc. Like there are other types.
Maybe one day your children will come back to you and say, Dad, they're great, but you didn't use the high quality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, my daughter would almost certainly say that, just because she's got opinions and she will always share them with her father when he's trying to feed her.
Oh, that's good. But I find it interesting because the cod, is it the cod that feed from the bottom of the seabed and then the haddock does
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
customs?
I, Yeah, I mean, like flatfish are bottom feeders,
Mm.
so they will feed directly from the bottom. But yeah, I'm not sure about cod. I mean, I think they're like deep sea fish, but maybe.
Yeah.
I'm no fisherman. I once went mackerel fishing, but yeah, I don't think it was. I'm not an angler.
And I assume frozen fish doesn't work quite so well. Like, like when you get the
No, actually, this is a bit of a myth. Is that a lot of fish is when they catch it, often in these bigger trawlers, they'll actually process it and freeze it on the boat. So actually, lots of fish that you get in the supermarket has already been frozen, and then it's defrosted when they um, sell it to you. Now, obviously, it's frozen so fresh that by the time that you're getting it, it's still a really it's a better product than if it'd been sat um, in a fridge for a week before it, I mean, actually, probably from the supermarket, some of it might be like 2 weeks old before it actually gets to you. And that's why you're never going to get the same qualities you can get from like a day boat fresh off St. Ives or, a Whitby or somewhere that they literally catching it and you're buying it straight away. So unless you happen to live,
yeah.
next to a fishing port, it's unlikely. And actually, so a lot of fish, and actually fish freezes really well.
Yeah.
It's got a nice tight, like the muscles are quite tight in the protein.
Yeah.
And so it freezes fine.
Yeah.
So actually buying kind of the frozen fillets, yeah, like if
Are just as good, aren't they,
they work,
nutritionally?
yeah, they work fine. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I think everyone should go and try those fish fingers and the home version
Yeah,
chicken nuggets,
yeah.
and hopefully,
I'm gonna, oh, sorry, just to say that I write up the recipes and then with a downloadable link because obviously, rather than kind of reading through step by step how to make a katsu curry sauce. So if you do want to make it, then there is a downloadable link so you can have a go yourself.
yeah, and they're fantastic. The sheets that you've produced already for previous episodes are fantastic. Yes, if you haven't,
Thank you.
those of you listening haven't already checked those out, go and see what Henry's put together because it's super amazing and really handy as a reference guide as well, isn't it, Henry? So yeah, super. Well, we hope that everyone's found that useful and helpful. Hopefully there's some top tips and yeah, there's lots we can learn from our children and things we can do to help them. And we can always extend the episode and talk more about how we can actually look at what specific exercises or a little bit more detail as we go through the episodes as well. But for now, Henry, thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
Yeah. Cheers, Hayley. Take care.